We're going to be looking at a story called Grogan Farms. I wrote this story during my 24-hour writing stream on January 15th. During that stream, I achieved affiliate status. I completed 7 stories during that stream. The goal was to see how many stories I could complete in a single day. The total stream ended up being about 13 hours, and I've completed 7 stories, started an 8th one that I gave up on because I just wasn't thinking clearly at that point. This is the 7th of the 7 stories that I've gone back to edit, so that may reflect the amount of confidence I have in the story. Again, like many of the stories I wrote that day, I think the premise is good. Some of them were better than others. I think this one was one that I didn't execute quite as well. It's a little bit of a revenge story, kind of a feud story between brothers who own 2 different farms. It needs to be punched up, and that's my goal today. There's 2 ways I could go about that. One way is I can make the story bloodier, and that's always an option. That's always a way to get some more bang for your buck as you're going through as you're going through a story. Another way is to make it funnier, and sometimes that is a way to go. For this particular story, I'm going to try for humor based on a pile-on, where the pranks and mischief between the 2 brothers just kind of grows and grows and grows as the story goes on. So instead of making it bloodier, which is a viable way to make a horror story stronger, I'm going to go the other direction, just make it funnier, and see if I can bring it up a little bit. I don't think this is going to be a one edit fix, but I do think I can make it better today, and I've kind of broken up some ideas and notes into 4 sections that I definitely want to add, probably more likely at the beginning than the ending, when the story starts to get a little darker. So let's see what we can do with this little story called Grogan Farms by Jay Wilburn. Chief Lucas Grogan Sr., I am writing this unofficial account to you only because Sheriff Felix Fell Taggart unofficially told me to, and let me add here, or else. As you'll see in the account of what happened, this deserves a real police report. We'll add another thing here too. Probably a few dozen. But you're related to the 2 men involved, even if you're only a 3rd cousin once removed. That must be enough, or at least it's enough for Sheriff Taggart. It should have been enough for you to step in sooner. Alright. Moving right along. If anything I said offends you, Kenny. Alright. I need to note the comma there. Feel free to file an official complaint, and we'll bring this whole business out into the open. I don't expect you'll want that. Probably just will go on making fun of the fact that I'm a Southern deputy with the last name Yank. So, let's get this unofficial story told, as seen by myself, Deputy Lennox Yank. Alright, you know the basic facts, but they bear repeating should this accidentally end up in the hands of someone who doesn't owe any of us favors. Kenny Grogan, as of last Thursday, still controlled what had been the family farm, the original Grogan Farms. His younger but broader brother, Van Grogan, took his inheritance from the adjacent land east along Highway 543, and he opened his own place serving field trips and tourists and named it Grogan Farms as well. This did not sit well with Kenny, but up until the billboard went up on the highway between the farms and towns, things hadn't turned violent. It was kind of a curiosity to folks. Most didn't know what caused the split other than their daddy and their cousin dying. Their daddy and your cousin dying. No one to keep them apart. I got 2 stories on the matter before things progressed beyond talking and insults. Kenny said that Van wanted to open a plantation-style reenactment complete with slave actors and everything. Kenny told me that he told his brother that places like that were being canceled, and it made no sense to bring that sort of trouble down on their heads. Van did open his own place, but no plantation shows that anyone saw or heard of. All right, let's say but with. It's okay to do incomplete sentences in the story, I think, because of the person talking, but we still want it to be together for clarity. Van claimed that Kenny was moonshining, and Van didn't want to go down for it. We investigated, of course. That part's official. There were only stills on display, but Kenny showed us the axe marks in the bottom of the boiler. There were implements for making mash, but we knew that was part of the lessons on the farm about the history of things. I can't say for sure that he wasn't tipped off and hid the real works, but we found nothing and didn't pursue it after that. All right, normally I'd say the truth is somewhere in the middle. But in this case, I'm inclined to think these brothers are the worst sources on each other. All right. Okay. It started off as pranks, or that's how most folks in the department thought of it at first. I only have bits and pieces of the beginning of things as I came on the case a little later. Alright, here we go. Let's get our first set of things here. Alright. Kenny found his plumbing full of soap. It backed up into other folks' houses, so we got involved but made no arrests. All right. Then the roach bombs went off at Van's place. They were helium balloons filled with roaches. Van's cabins were filled with them, and then a heat source popped them, sending roaches flying everywhere. Because of the heat, they were actually able to fly. Like let me put a comma there. Like they sometimes do in these parts when it's a particularly hot and humid summer. Van had to shut down for extermination. he didn't file a report in the end. And put another comma there. Alright, so far so good. Let's add a little more. Alright. Someone tapped into the sound system. At Kenny's farm and started playing Rick Astley's We Have Warp Capabilities. Oh, thanks for jumping in. I actually had some technical difficulties myself. I had to take a couple attempts and restart my computer before I got going today. So here we go. Writing a revenge story about two brother farmers that split up their land and started playing pranks on each other that escalated. Adding a few more in to try to punch up the story a little bit. Someone tapped into the sound system at Kenny's farm and started playing Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Alright. Never Gonna Give You Up. I like that song, but it's apparently an internet thing. We got involved because... Oh, cool. Very cool. We got involved because the hack got into the Wi-Fi for some of the surrounding banks and businesses. Had to turn it off at the source on the farm. We still can't figure out how that happened. How are you liking the flash fiction so far, man? When sometimes some of those books are hit and miss. They're kind of hard to find sometimes. I've actually read a couple that were not horror ones, and I had a little more trouble getting my head around them. Something about the punch of horror, I think, works with flash fiction better. We still can't figure out how that happened. Okay. Van had someone... Okay. Not bad. Some of the stories just don't make sense to me. Yeah. It's some of those anthologies were older. I think some of those authors have improved since then. There's a lot to pack into a 1,000-word story, I guess. All right. Someone froze Mentos. The candy in the ice cubes at Van's farm when they melted in the sodas people bought. They fizzed up everywhere. Folks complained to us, so we had to investigate. All right. Super glue on toilets Kenny's farm. Super glue on toilets at Kenny's farm had rescue sent out to get a couple tourists free. Alright, I got done reading a story and my response is just, oh, okay. Yeah, that's not what you want out of a story as a writer or as a reader. Alright. The sewage and water lines got switched at Van's farm. He didn't get caught in a sewage shower. Didn't get caught in a sewage shower, but it blew out his hot water heater. I think that may be a compound word, but I'll figure it out later. Alright, so we have completed that one. I may have too much here, but I think it's going to work once it's all put in. Alright. Didn't really know what was going on at that point, but what I do know, and what appears in no other statement than this one, is that Kenny showed up at the Grogan Farms number 2 drunk with a shotgun after the billboard advertising the real Grogan Farms went up and diverted business from the original. The gun went off more than once by the sound of things, but no damage was reported, and no one turned up hurt or dead that night. The billboard was torn down, not just the canvas with the message, but the whole thing, the whole structure. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I feel really energized about writing, kind of being able to have people come on and participate, and especially the participation I got back when I did that long stream. Didn't expect people to come on, and so it's good to be making progress even on something new like this. So I really appreciate it. So not just the subscription, but man, being on board like really early on, even back in that first attempt where I was just playing around with it and using my laptop camera and everything. You were one of the first guys on, and I appreciate you kind of encouraging me through all those scant streams early on. So thank you, Clever, for jumping on, man. Appreciate you on here and appreciate you in real life when we run into each other too. All right, so we got the billboard torn down, but the whole structure pulled out to the ground, blocking 2 lanes of 543. We had to use a crane to move that at a huge cost. If evidence arises about that, this won't stay quiet. As far as I can follow the timeline, seeing as they stopped calling us to report anything after this, the cornfields at Kenny's farm burned halfway before his guys got it under control. They were scrubbing blue spray paint off the cabins when the field trips met. I didn't catch the words before they were erased, but there were clearly a lot of crudely drawn blue male members pretty much everywhere. Kenny claimed it was a controlled burn and got a little out of control. He even volunteered to pay the illegal burn fine to the county without objection, but it was never leveled against him. All right. Thank you, sir. Let's throw in some extra pranks here. Later, we found some animal skulls in a refrigerator. We think might have been placed as a scare before this really got out of hand. Got out of hand. All right. Not sure the order, but all the soap in Van's trailer on his property got painted with nail polish so it wouldn't lather up. Alright, what else happened? There was sugar in gas tanks. We found out from the local body shops. Again, never officially reported. Alright. And, okay, hold on. And we hear all of Van's chickens were stolen and replaced with turkey buzzards. Someone should have done something sooner, but people have to press charges or we have to find a body. We're still looking if you care. Alright, so we finished that label. I got two more that I want to sneak into this story to kind of pump up the action here, but let's see if where they fit. I think next, as best I can recall, Van's wife turned up missing. We couldn't do much with rumors and no missing persons report, but I tried my best to tail Van as he went all over town looking for her. As far as I could tell, he never checked on Kenny. It might be unrelated, but I doubt any of this was unrelated. Rumor, and it's only rumor, is that she was found high out of her mind with several men who took quite a beating from Van. Again, I can't confirm any of this, but when Kenny's wife disappeared briefly, it led to a chase along the back roads. By the time we got there, the cars were gone, and one report of a woman being dumped from one moving car and picked up by another didn't include any plates or description of individuals. The fellow did say, the fellow who saw that bit did say that he thought the woman was all bloody, but he thought later it might have been words written on her in lipstick. Both Kenny and Van were cordial with our questioning, which made me wildly suspicious. Their wives seemed to be shell-shocked, both of them. Both women claimed nothing happened to them. All right. I started documenting everything now that I was involved, even if, let me put a comma there, even if it wasn't in official reports. I knew it was going to end badly. Everyone in town, including you, should have known. All right. Kenny's buildings were filled with a slew, I don't know if this is correct spelling, of South American frogs. They were the kind used for poison darts, but the local science guy told us that their diet in America made them non-poisonous. Still, the problem was that they were an invasive species and have wreaked havoc on the local wildlife when they got out from Grogan farms. National Geographic did a story on that, but didn't mention the business between Kenny and Van. Alright, what's the next bit here? Next thing seemed small. Someone put grease paint under Van's wipers. He smeared a rainbow over his window, his windshield, while driving and ran off the road. Next, a bunch of rainbow flags got speared into all of Kenny's trees on the original property. You know how guys around here feel about rainbow flags, but that's beside the point. They were speared into the trees using those poison axes. You know the kind. It was those, alright, wrote this down, those hypo hatchets full of herbicide that kill trees. It wasn't long until almost every tree on Grogan Farms #1 was dying. Alright. I believe that's the last, yes. Alright, so I got one more section to possibly add in here later on if I can figure out where it fits. The razor blade showed up in the popcorn at the original Grogan Farms, and business dropped off. Let's say eventually, because we already hit the original. Eventually, the razor blades showed up in popcorn at the original Grogan Farms, and business dropped off. That was followed by needles and homemade ice cream over at Van's place. Business dropped off precipitously for both places. They pretty much became compounds at that point. The school system, all of them in the state, the school systems, all of them in the state, canceled all trips to either of the Grogan Farms. Kinney's men moved on the property into cabins, and that had only been displays before. Trailers were towed onto Van's land, and his men moved in there. They all walked around armed. Still, the back and forth continued, so they weren't great guards. We got some noise complaints about loud drinking and partying from both farms, so that may have had something to do with the lack of security and the escalation of things too. Okay. Alright, one more new section, and then I think we push into where things get darker and darker. Alright. It got cold one night, and Kenny's boys woke up from hangovers to find someone had frozen wet cotton balls to their all over their trucks. Okay. Someone injected mayonnaise. Let me see if I can kind of get close to spelling that right. Someone injected mayonnaise into a donut delivery to Van's property. The delivery, all right, let's say the shop. Shop has a good reputation and no idea how the switch happened. I was told it was mayo. I hope it was just that, but I have my doubts. Alright. Good enough. some of Kenny's guys had a bad day when poison ivy got crunched up in their sunscreen. Most of those guys don't wear it, but the ones who did were in hell for a while. Alright, so I think we've added in enough just onslaught of pranks to punch up the story. Now let's see if I can stick the ending here a little bit. I know for a fact I'm going to need to edit some more, but I feel better about it, having added in enough extra details to sort of put it over the top a little. As the men disappeared one by one, almost in perfect balance so the losses stayed equal on both sides, no one reported anyone missing. Either these men had no relatives or none that cared. They could have just driven away on their own. Alright. I sure as hell would have. But reaching out to other agencies, let's put a comma there. We found no traces of men or their of the men or their vehicles. Not too long of this, and the rest left before they disappeared. Van's wife left too. Boards started disappearing from cabins. Trailers kept getting crushed in the night. Gunshots heard, but again, we live in the country, so not a big thing unless someone reports, and no one was going near the Grogan farms anymore. Anyone who saw something acted like they didn't, and I couldn't blame them. Alright, moving along. Now we get to the end of things. Kenny's and Van's vehicles were spotted together down by the river. By the time we got there, the vehicles were gone, and a couple days later were parked back in their respective driveways of their ruined farms. We swept the river for miles. We found a few guns. We found a few discarded guns, but none that we could tie to the Grogan brothers or any other crimes. About every other day, we get sightings reported of Van or Kenny or both. The wives aren't talking, none of the surviving hands have anything to say to us, and neither do you. We also have reports of your personal vehicle down that way. Your buddy, my boss, wouldn't let me check on your phone records, but not even request. Kenny and Van switched to burners somewhere along the way. We have plenty of video of them buying the phones over and over from gas stations, sometimes missing each other only by minutes, but we got nothing on the calls. I don't think you use burners yourself, Chief. If you happen to see or recall anything in your texts or messages, be sure to tell us, would you? Anyway, it was kind of fun writing you this unofficial account of things. I hope it helps, even if you're just fishing to see what we already know. I'm curious if you sided with one brother or the other, or if you just got rid of both. I know both properties went to the wives, and both planned to sell cheap. They didn't mention to whom, but I'd bet before this is over, you'll have good family land in your possession, whether you plan to farm again or just break it up to make a profit with developers. You know where to find me, and I'll be watching out for you and your boys. Hope this helps settle things. Alright. I might, going back through, make it more look like that the chief that this is written to might have been the one doing the pranks. I hadn't really thought about that before, but maybe he was going back and forth to kind of drive the two brothers away. It's set up early on that this is kind of an unofficial report as a favor from the sheriff to the chief of police, and the deputy is not so sure about it. So it might be interesting if peppered through here, the deputy mentions trying to check on where the chief was during all these incidents. So that might be the next edit when I go back through again, and that may really give the story an anchor. It has a bunch of pranks that escalate into the disappearances, but I think having sort of that twist, maybe even have it mentioned at the beginning, and just play on through, and then be punched again at the end, might make the story what it needs to be. So I think that might be the final touch.